I don't know if you noticed, but Democrats had held a Medicaid day of action, right? All got together, big day of action. But unfortunately, they missed the real day of action when they voted to shut the government down. They voted against Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security recipients. They voted against paying our service members, and they voted against funding WIC. They also voted against the American people. This led to a complete meltdown by the Democratic Party, and when asked repeatedly whether he has confidence in Senator Schumer, House Minority Leader took days to decide. Others have publicly ridiculed Senator Schumer. Listen to some of their own comments. Quote, Schumer is supposed to be the leader of the opposition, not a rank-and-file member of the GOP. Another one, and I quote, I think it's a huge slap in the face, and I think there's a wide sense of betrayal. And some even called for Senator Schumer's resignation. Again, Democrats don't have a clear leader, and recent polls prove this. When asked who best reflects the core values of the Democratic Party, there was no clear answer. 10% said AOC. She got the highest number of votes. 9% said Kamala Harris, 8% said Bernie Sanders, and Rep. Crockett, a chosen Your Fighter participant, tied former President Obama with 4%. During recess, I expected to see Schumer and Jeffries proving to the country that they are the leaders of the party. But do you know who filled the void for them? Governor Walz, Rep. AOC, and Senator Bernie Sanders. It seems that the extreme socialists are the leaders of the Democratic Party. And they took their message nationwide. Socialists are defining the Democrats' identity amidst the leadership void. I bet this leads to more Democratic infighting, fear-mongering, of course, and advocacy for even more an extreme agenda. The Democrats will do this while their party's favorability rating is at an all-time low. Gee, I wonder why. Meanwhile, Republicans are united behind President Trump and the American people's agenda. And I'll say that again. We are united around President Trump and the American people's agenda. Americans are optimistic. Americans believe the country is headed in the right direction. Republicans are getting the country back on track. This is thanks to President Trump and Republicans' efforts to restore common sense. And it's not a coincidence that President Trump's approval rating is reaching all-time highs. And approval of House representatives is moving upwards as well. House Republicans are securing the border, we are protecting women, and we are passing legislation to lower costs for American families. We kept the government open, and our day of action was voting to protect Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security recipients. And House Republicans passed our House budget resolution, and the Senate should pass it too. And I'll share with you, we are just getting started, so buckle up. And because we have a long way to go and a lot more wins on the horizon. And here to speak about the House Republicans' work is freshman Representative Pat Harrington from North Carolina. He's a combat veteran and a small business entrepreneur, and he's going to give his perspective on working in the unified House GOP. Welcome, Pat.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You don't probably need that box,
No,
do you?
we could put it underneath the podium.
Yeah,
That'd be all right.
you don't need it.
No. Hey, good morning, everybody. I want to talk about the Democrat disconnect, and this should be a proper term at this point. But I want to share that when I came to Congress just a few months ago, from day one, it's been clear to me that we House Republicans are both unified and focused. We know who we are, we know what we stand for, and we know what the American people sent us here to do. The same cannot be said for the Democratic Party. Right now, their party is in complete disarray. Their coalition is fractured, their leadership has vanished, and their message is completely disconnected from the lives of ordinary Americans. 1 year ago, 75% of Democrats approved of their party's performance in Washington. Just this last week, that number has collapsed to just 40%. Their base is abandoning them, and it's pretty darn easy to see why. While Americans are struggling with the cost of groceries, gas, and rent, Democrats are putting on a nationwide socialist roadshow with Bernie Sanders and AOC. That's their response to getting rejected at the ballot box. Just going even further to the fringe. AOC is literally sharing tips on how illegal immigrants can evade ICE. At the same time, Bernie Sanders is on national television claiming that no Democrat supports open borders and illegal immigration. The left hand doesn't know what the far left hand is actually doing. Democrats are too busy fighting each other and staging a coup against Chuck Schumer to offer any kind of real substantive leadership. There is a complete disconnect between Democratic leaders and the American people. They aren't listening, they aren't leading, and they are not even pretending to care about the kitchen table issues any longer. Instead, they're doubling and tripling down on the same radical policies that voters overwhelmingly rejected in November. And I think that that is an incredibly important point. They voted against protecting women's sports. They've blocked efforts to close our southern border. They've refused to deport violent criminals, sex offenders, gang members, and murderers. They've tried to decriminalize illegal border crossings and fought against voter ID laws. They've backed letting biological men participate in girls' sports, turning their backs on parents, and most importantly, basic common sense. This is not a party that is looking to course correct. It's a party moving even further to the left at the exact moment voters are telling them to turn around. Meanwhile, House Republicans, all of us up here, are moving with genuine purpose and clarity. We're working to secure the border, lower costs, strengthen our economy, and protect our communities for the benefit of the American people. The contrast could not be clearer. One party is delivering, the other is falling apart.
For 4 years, the Biden administration allowed millions of illegal aliens into the United States, including the murderers of Laken Riley, of Jocelyn and Gary, and Kayla Hamilton. Only 12 days ago, a Georgia mother of 5 was brutally murdered by a monster who was caught and released by the Biden administration in 2021. The need to get dangerous illegal aliens out of our communities is urgent. Under the Biden administration, our nation's adversaries became emboldened by the weak and incompetent leadership displayed in the Oval Office. The mission to restore America's military dominance and strength on the world stage has never been more urgent. Since 2017, Americans have enjoyed historic tax cuts implemented during President Trump's first term, which grew real wages by nearly 5%. The call to keep those cuts in place and prevent a tax hike of historic proportions is also urgent. The mandate to enact President Donald Trump's agenda is even more urgent. In November, 77 million Americans had a fire underneath them when they went to the polls and voted for real change. Now Congress ought to light our own match and get moving. Dragging our feet on reconciliation is not an option. Failure is not an option. And for border security, not for national security, and not for the prosperity of everyday Americans. The Republican trifecta must continue to move in lockstep with urgency for the American people, as we've already done in historic ways. The work ahead will not be easy, but we will get it done, and we will deliver on our America First agenda. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Whip. While the Democrat Party continues to show the country that they're a leaderless, rudderless ship, Republicans have been uniting to lead this country out of the doldrums from the Biden administration. You can just look at the actions we've taken in the House, working with the Senate and with President Trump to start getting our country back on track. And that hard work is already paying off for American families. You're seeing gas prices start to come down. Egg prices are starting to come down. And what's really important for long-term growth, billions and now trillions of dollars of private investment are coming back home to America to create really good, high-paying jobs for American workers. The Speaker and I were proud to attend a White House ceremony yesterday with our governor and other leaders, where Hyundai announced a multi-billion-dollar plant that they're building in the United States of America. Going to create about 1,400 jobs in Louisiana. This is just one of many examples that we're seeing that we call the Trump effect, where we're seeing so many companies invest heavily in Louisiana and other states. In our state alone, we've had probably over $40 billion of private investment announced since President Trump took office again. And that's not only really good jobs, it's things like energy security, building more car manufacturing plants, and the resources that go along with it. We'll no longer have to source those materials from other countries. Hostile countries, in many cases, will now be able to refine those materials here in the United States as well with American workers. That would not have happened without the leadership of President Trump. We've totaled up, when you look at all the private investment that's come into the United States, just in the 2 months since Donald Trump has taken office, it's nearly $4 trillion in new jobs and investment in the United States of America. That's historic, it's unprecedented, and we're just getting started. We've been talking to President Trump. I talked to him twice over the weekend about budget reconciliation. Now that we got government funding out of the way, and the Speaker did a phenomenal job of uniting Republicans. Imagine a CR to fund government passed exclusively by Republicans. One Democrat came along after we had the votes to pass it in the House, and then the Senate ultimately had to finally take that bill up and pass it themselves, which is what caused the Democrats to go into yet another tailspin, because Democrats wanted to shut the government down. Almost every Democrat voted against that bill, which also, by the way, had a 40-year largest increase pay raise for our military, our men and women in uniform who deserved that massive pay raise. Almost every Democrat voted no on that, as well as trying to shut the government down. So they still don't want to be serious. They're not going to be taken seriously by the American people. But we're going to keep doing our job, and the next job is budget reconciliation. That is number one on President Trump's priority list now, to get Congress to work together with him to pass that one big beautiful bill that we've been talking about. A bill that not only locks in tax rates, creates more investment in the United States, but also allows us to produce more energy in America, lowering costs for families, creates more border security for America to allow President Trump to continue the great work he's done. We've seen over a 95% drop in illegal crossings. We need to build out the wall. We need to give more technology to our Border Patrol agents that President Trump has asked for, strengthening our national defense and bringing common sense back into the rule and regulatory process in Washington. These are just the first few months of what's going to be an historic majority working for the American people, delivering results for the American people. And the man who's leading this cause and uniting Republicans, even with just a 2-seat majority, hopefully not for much longer, we're going to grow that number. But even with that, our Speaker's been keeping us together, moving our agenda. Speaker Mike Johnson.
Thank you, Leader Scalise and these other members. It's a great day, but I've got to address a couple of things with you, and I need to start with something that's pretty serious. Chuck Schumer engaged in a lot of unusual activity last week, but among the most concerning was his invitation to activists nationwide. I want to quote to you what he said on PBS and I think in other venues, but this is what he said on that particular program, quote, "We are mobilizing in New York. We have people going to the Republican districts and going after these Republicans who are voting for this and forcing them to either change their vote or face the consequences," unquote. It was reminiscent of the threats he made to Supreme Court justices a year and a half ago or so on the steps of the Supreme Court. It's dangerous rhetoric. And that message was received. So we had far left activists go into some of these events. They engaged in a physical altercation at least one of them, Representative Lawler in New York, just hours after he made that call to action. This isn't just a problem in that state, it's a problem across the country, and we had members who are rightfully concerned about threats of physical violence at their events and in their districts. In some cases, they even went to events for their children at school. It's gotten out of hand. That behavior cannot be tolerated. It's an enhanced threat environment for a lot of reasons, and we see Tesla dealerships being firebombed and all these things happening. It cannot be encouraged by leaders in Congress. So I am calling on Leader Schumer and Leader Jeffries in the House to put an end to this, to explain that threats of violence and intimidation like that is not an acceptable form of political protest. We all believe in free speech. I used to defend it in courts, but this is something very different, and it's a very serious situation, and they need to get control of that. Chuck Schumer and congressional Democrats are feeling the heat, and they're lashing out because of it. And we saw all sorts of unusual activity over the last week. It's well chronicled. The Democrats have no vision, no message, no leader. You heard about it here today. The American people have taken note. CNN found that just 29% of the people view the Democratic Party favorably now. NBC found the number at 27%. Quinnipiac poll over the weekend was an interesting one. Since they've been taking the poll, which goes back many years, decades, congressional Democrats are at their lowest approval rating with their own base ever. They're 9 points underwater. What's really interesting about that, Politico did a piece on this, and they contrasted where the Democrats stand and where we stand. While they're at their lowest number of all time and they're 9 points underwater with their own base, congressional Republicans are at our highest mark ever, and we're at plus 69 points with our own base. That's a pretty stark contrast. And I think we all know why. Axios reported yesterday that Democrats are, quote, in their deepest hole in nearly 50 years. This is not a mystery. Everyone understands what's happening and why. In their haste to oppose President Trump in our efforts to make government more efficient, Democrats are cutting off their noses to spite their own face. Look, I've made a list of this. They're cheering the decline of an American company which employs over 100,000 workers. They refuse to celebrate the return of stranded American astronauts because SpaceX facilitated their return. Without a hint of irony, they're trading in their electric vehicles for SUVs, as was noted earlier. All right? They publicly refuse to stand for a childhood cancer survivor, victims of violent crimes during President Trump's joint address. Their message has gone from, it's more than just anti-Trump now, it's anti-American, and everyone sees that, and the polling reflects it. The American people are not stupid. They understand what's happening here. We have a word of advice to our Democrat colleagues. If you want to pull yourselves out of the wilderness and the doldrums that you're in, get on board with the American people who support our common sense agenda. It is common sense to keep men out of women's sports. It is common sense to secure the border and deport dangerous illegal aliens, as you talked about earlier. It is common sense to make government more efficient and cut fraud, waste, and abuse, and do right by the taxpayer. We are not doing these things because they're Republican priorities. They are priorities because it's the right thing to do. And the American people want the right thing to be done. And the Democrats are opposing it, and they see it very clearly. Republicans in Congress enjoy record high levels of approval because we're engaging in what we understand to be simple truths, and we're delivering on it. We got a small majority, that's true. But this House GOP conference has stayed together and stayed laser focused on passing common sense legislation and executing the Trump agenda as quickly as possible. When we stay united, we do right by the people. We look forward to working with Leader Thune and our Senate counterparts to move that budget reconciliation bill. It will be the largest, most consequential piece of legislation in decades, maybe in one of the most in all of the history of Congress. We're excited to deliver that for the people, and we have no time to waste. We've got almost 80 million people that supported President Trump, and House Republicans. We all had our largest totals ever. We're going to do what they asked us to do, and we are not going to keep them waiting. And so you're going to see us moving aggressively here and across the country to make sure that happens. So I'll yield to some of your questions.
You just mentioned the Senate. Obviously, y'all released a statement yesterday about this. Do you think that the Senate's dragging their feet on reconciliation? Do you think they need to kind of speed things up and hurry up?
Well, look, I'm going to say this, and I've been saying this consistently, and I believe it. There's no daylight between House and Senate Republicans. We are one team. I speak with Leader Thune about this constantly, and with individual members of the Senate over there. We're all united on the mission, and there's been different ideas about how to complete the mission, but I think it's all coming together now. This week will be pivotal. We have a big meeting at the White House later today with the leaders in both chambers, Republican leaders, to unite and get this thing done. I don't fault the Senate. They've had a lot on their plates. They had to get all the confirmations done for the administration. It takes a lot of floor time. Leader Thune's kept them in 5 days a week, just working around the clock, getting their job done. But we began in the House. We have a bit of an advantage over the Senate because we began this a long time ago. In fact, it was a year ago in March that we first got the committee chairs together and said, start working on your reconciliation bill priorities. We knew that we would come to unified government. We were convinced that President Trump would win and that we would have the Senate and the House, and we wanted to be prepared to lead. We put together the playbook, as you've all heard me talk about so many times, and we did all that work. It took a lot of time, many, many months to get us to where we are. The Senate is a little bit behind pace, not because they weren't working hard, but because they were just engaging in other things. And so what we're trying to do now is fast forward their process so they can get the cliff notes of basically what we did for the last year and skip through some of those steps because we'll all get to the same point. And I think that's very important. I have been pressing very hard, very aggressively to get the reconciliation bill done by late spring. You've all heard me say that. I mean, I'm trying to get this to the president's desk for signature at least by Memorial Day. I think it's very important. I think the timing is very important because we have to bring stability to the markets. We've got to make sure everybody's tax rates are locked in and they know that so people can make decisions about expanding their businesses and jobs and other things. We've got to, it'll settle the bond markets, it will secure the border, it will help us to restore and maintain peace through strength, and of course it'll prevent the largest tax increase in U.S. history. All those things are very important to get done quickly so that the American people can feel the results of it. This is going to be a great, great piece of legislation, historic, and we're anxious to get it done. Second row.
Speaker Johnson, as you know, some of your Republican colleagues have signed on to an effort to force a vote on allowing proxy voting for new parents. Republicans use this method during the pandemic. Why not have a carve-out targeted for new parents for a short period of time?
So I addressed this in conference this morning. That's okay. You good? All right, we're good. All right, good. We addressed this in conference this morning. A handful of our colleagues have gotten behind the effort, and look, I'm a father. I'm pro-family. The Republican Party is pro-family. We want to make it as easy as possible for young parents to be able to participate in the process. But proxy voting, in my view, is unconstitutional. In fact, I feel so strongly about it, I helped present a brief to the United States Supreme Court just about 2 years ago, or longer now, all my days run together, years run together, but when Nancy Pelosi invented proxy voting, okay, using COVID as the excuse for that, it took us down a trail that I thought violated the very document that organized us. And I don't think it's constitutional. I think the founders intended that you have you have a presence of the members there in person, not just for quorum calls, but for votes itself. This is a deliberative body. You cannot deliberate with your colleagues if you're out somewhere else. Now, there are family circumstances that make it difficult for people to attend votes. I understand that. I've had them myself. Many of us have. The leader was almost assassinated. He was out for months and missed a lot of votes. But his constituents understood that, and we did. And we carried forward. Here's the problem. If you create a proxy vote opportunity just for young parents, mothers and the fathers in those situations, then where is the limiting principle? People have colleagues who feel equally convicted about this. Look, what if someone is ill, or what if their spouse is ill? What if their child contracts some sort of disease or cancer, heaven forbid, and they need prolonged treatment? Can they be out for that? There's no limiting principle that would stop that, I think, if we go down that road. And so I believe it's unconstitutional. I believe it violates more than 2 centuries of tradition in the institution. And I think that it opens a Pandora's box where ultimately maybe no one is here and we're all voting remotely by AI or something. I don't know. I don't think that's what Congress is supposed to be. So I addressed it, in the room with all the House Republicans this morning. I'm not angry at anybody for doing this. Understand the motives are pure. Anna Paulina Luna has brought it forward. She has pure motives, and I talked with her about it last night. But I just can't, as the leader of this institution and the one who's supposed to protect it, I don't feel like I can get on board with that, and I think I have an opportunity to speak out about it. So, yeah.
Last question. Mr. Leader, two questions on the same topic. Have you ever engaged in messaging app chats with the Trump administration about national security matters? That includes Signal, whatever, all of those things. And also, I think you know the story, but I'm curious if the Biden administration would have been found out that they were discussing national security attacks on other countries over Signal. I wonder how you would react to that.
Well, look, the White House came out with a statement, I think within the last hour. Somebody handed me what they said. They clarified there were no war plans discussed. There was no classified material sent on that thread. The White House counsel is looking into the matter, looking into how this other number was inadvertently added. Obviously, that was a mistake and a serious one. But I just want to say, I mean, thanks to President Trump and his strong leadership and all the everybody on that group chat, the leaders on that group chat are extraordinary people. I know them all personally. They're patriots. They're doing a great job for the country. And that was a successful mission. I mean, we're taking out Houthi terrorists. That's what the American people expect the administration to do, to restore peace through strength and to act decisively. So, look, they've acknowledged that there was an error, and they're correcting it. And I would have asked the same thing of the Biden administration. I don't think anyone should have lost their job over that because an errant number, found its way onto a dialogue between leaders. It's a mistake, but we got to correct it going forward, and they will.
Was the mistake adding the reporter, or was the mistake having a Signal chat about these matters at all?
I don't use Signal. I don't know all the parameters of it, so it's not I'm not in a position to determine whether that's appropriate or not. You have to leave that to others. But I would just say, obviously, we got to be careful with these things, and I know that they will. I mean, Mike Waltz is a colleague of mine, former colleague, he was born for the job. He is highly qualified. The president said he has total confidence in him, and we do as well. So, yeah. Last one. Yeah.
On judicial impeachments, you've had a lot of resolutions that are in front of you right now. I know your focus is on budget reconciliation. Is your plan to bring up these impeachment resolutions that have been brought forward? And if you do, are you concerned this will stall any progress that you want to make with regards to budget reconciliation?
We're working with the Judiciary Committee, which is the appropriate area of jurisdiction for that. I talked to Chairman Jordan this morning about it. And they'll be having a hearing early next week, I believe, to highlight these abuses. Let me just say this, and I know that you all have seen the numbers, but this is a serious problem. I used to be a litigator. I was a constitutional law attorney. I used to litigate all these cases for 20 years. Routinely, I would have activist judges issue opinions against me, and I would go get them overturned on appeal. That is the process. But something is happening right now that has not happened before. In the last 100 years, listen to this, 67% of the injunctions issued against a president were issued against one president alone, and that's Donald J. Trump. 67% of the injunctions over the last 100 years. Okay, that's a problem. 92% of those were issued by judges who were known or accused of being partisan, Democrat appointees to the court. So that something unusual is happening, something that is out of the norm. It is a dangerous trend, and it violates equal justice under law, that critical principle. It violates our system itself. It violates separation of powers when a judge thinks that they can enjoin something that a president is doing that the American people voted for. That is not what the founders intended. So there's a natural tension between the branches of the government, and we're working through that. The Judiciary Committee is looking at alternatives. One of the bills that I really like that's already been through committee was authored by Representative Darrell Issa, and that would limit the scope of federal injunctions, the ability of one individual judge to abuse the system in this way. And it would be, in my view, a dramatic improvement on that. So we'll be moving, I think, that piece of legislation and some others to address it because we have an Article I authority under the Constitution to do that. We do have authority over the federal courts, as you know. We can eliminate an entire district court. We have power funding over the courts and all these other things. But desperate times call for desperate measures, and Congress is going to act. So stay tuned for that. Thank you.
Will the judges testify before the committee?
We'll see. We'll see.